We have 0 attendees so far.
I wonder if the public link, there's something weird about it.
I just had somebody test it to make sure.
Okay.
They went to the waiting room.
Okay. Since this has been there's been a lot of chatter about this particular project in the town on some of the social media pages. So there seemed to be quite a bit of interest.
I believe we've got 1 attendee.
All right, well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this virtual public meeting for the Union County Critical Intersection Program. Phase 2 of this program includes 5 intersections, and we've been hosting separate virtual public meetings for each intersection, and tonight's meeting will focus on the NC 75 and Potter Road intersection in Mineral Springs. We're going to start with just a brief presentation that will take about 10 minutes, and then we're going to open it up for a question and answer session. But before we jump into the presentation, I just want to take a minute to introduce all the panelists that we have for tonight. My name is Jenny Noonkester with RSNH, and I'm a senior planner on the consulting team that's assisting the county with this project. And next I'll have Bjorn Hansen with Union County introduce himself.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Bjorn Hansen. I work for Union County in the planning department and the transportation planner for the county and oversee the critical intersection program. And one of the phases in this program is to develop designs for intersections that we want to hopefully improve in the future. And so this is an important meeting to get the feedback from the community before the towns and the county make decisions on what designs they support. So I encourage you to ask questions and follow up after tonight's meeting if you have any additional questions before this goes for adoption later this spring.
Thank you. And we also have Mayor Rick Becker with the town of Fairview.
Mineral Springs, Jenny.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
That's okay. And welcome everybody. And thank you for joining us. And thanks to Union County and to RSNH and to NCDOT for putting this together for us.
And we also have Vicki Brooks with the town of Mineral Springs.
Good evening, this is Vicki. I am the zoning administrator and planner here in Mineral Springs. Welcome, everyone.
Thanks, Vicki. And we have Stuart Basham with NCDOT.
Thank you, Jenny. I'm Stuart Basham with NCDOT's Division 10 office in Albemarle. I'm the division planning engineer, and I handle planning and funding prioritization of projects, and I'm involved in many committees for transportation efforts around the region, such as the Union County Critical Intersection Analysis.
Thank you, Stuart. And we also have Travis Pressler with NCDOT.
Thank you, Jenny. Travis Pressler with NCDOT. I work in the Monroe office. I'm the district engineer for Union County and am primarily involved in permitting, access permits, encroachment permits, things of that nature for Union and Anson County.
And then last but not least, we have Allison Drake with RSNH.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Allison Drake. I am the consultant project manager for this project, as Jenny stated, with RSNH.
All right, and if you can go to the next slide, Allison. Thank you. I'm just going to go through a couple of the logistics for the webinar. Meeting attendees won't be able to share your video or audio, so we have a question and answer box at the bottom of your screen. So if you have any questions or comments at any point during the meeting, if you can just click on the Q&A box and type your question in there, and we'll get to answering those during the Q&A portion after the presentation. We're also recording this meeting, so we'll post that on the project website for anyone that wasn't able to attend the webinar tonight. And lastly, I'll just ask our panelists to please keep their microphones muted when they aren't speaking, so we'll try to minimize any of the background noise. And the next slide, please, Allison. And this is just an overview of the presentation for tonight. We're going to start with some background information about the Critical Intersection Program, and we'll show you the intersections that are included in Phase 2 and talk about the steps in the study process. And then we're going to switch over to the online website for the NC 75 Potter Road intersection, and we'll talk about the design concepts that are being considered there and then the next steps in the process. And as I mentioned, after the presentation, we'll start the Q&A session, but you can type your questions at any point during the presentation. And with that, I will hand it over to Bjorn to give us some background information on the program.
Thank you, Jenny. So the critical intersection program is something that was brought up and identified in 2014. The county and the municipalities were getting frustrated in terms of all these needs identified throughout the county and focusing its limited resources on implementing specific needed improvements. So the county applied for funds through the Regional Transportation Planning Organization to conduct a study of intersections, figure out which ones should they focus on and what should they do. That was conducted in 2016. There were 54 intersections that were identified through that process, and through that, 15 were identified for emphasis and additional work on developing designs. Over the next few years, between the county, the municipalities, and the NCDOT, we were successful in getting funding for over half of those intersections. And so by 2018, it was determined that we needed to update this list to get a new list of intersections, knowing that it takes a couple of years to go through this. So in 2019, we refreshed the list and identified an additional 15 intersections. This intersection, NC 75 and Potter, was one of those locations. Now, all we did was identify the locations. We didn't necessarily develop the designs. That was where we needed some consultants' expertise. And so we received 2 separate grants from the same Charlotte Regional Transportation Planning Organization to do 2 bundles of intersections for design work. The first one was last year, where we did 6 intersections. And then this one, which will be completed by the summer, was for 5 additional intersections. Next slide, please. So you can see on this map where the 15 locations are, not all of them are eligible to get design work done because they may not be on a federal aid system route. There's a lot of funding rules that apply for what we can actually do to get these intersections funded for improvements. Some are not eligible for certain types of funding categories. So the ones in gray, we completed the designs last year, and in fact, a couple of them have since been funded for improvements. And then the ones in navy blue are the ones we're working on now. We had our first meeting last week at 200 and Plyler Mill, and the second one is here tonight at NC 75 and Potter. And we will continue this over the next week to complete these and complete our comment period in early April. Next slide. And now I will hand it off to Allison, who will go through the actual process for actually designing and developing cost estimates for the specific locations.
Thank you, Bjorn. So in setting these intersections, Union County and its municipalities formed an advisory committee that included the town of Mineral Springs. So based on the data that we gathered and analysis results, 2 alternatives were developed for each intersection. We are now in the public involvement stage where we are engaging the public for feedback through virtual meetings as well as the online survey. These results will be used to select a preferred alternative for each intersection. Cost estimates and recommendations will then be compiled into a final report, which will be used to give Mineral Springs and other municipalities a leg up to compete for funding for these projects. The final report will be posted on the Union County website upon completion. We'll now show the website that is publicly available to discuss the intersection in more detail. The NC 75 and Potter Road intersection is located in Mineral Springs and is currently a signalized intersection with no turn lanes and minimal pedestrian accommodations. The intersection is in the heart of downtown where there are nearby businesses, Mineral Springs United Methodist Church, and a railroad crossing. Congestion is anticipated to worsen during peak traffic periods of the day. 2 alternatives were developed to address traffic delays as well as provide pedestrian accommodations. So alternative 1 consists of turn lane improvements and alternative 2 is a roundabout. Alternative 1 adds left turn lanes from NC 75 to Potter Road, as well as both right and left turn lanes from Potter Road to 75. Sidewalks and marked crosswalks are also included for pedestrian connectivity and safety. Concrete islands, as shown here, would be added to control vehicles turning in and out of driveways close to the intersection. However, access would remain to all the properties surrounding the intersection. Right-of-way acquisition will be required for these improvements, including the acquisition of these 2 buildings shown on the corner. NCDOT has a standard process for right-of-way acquisition, but is not happening at this time as the project is not yet funded. This alternative potentially reduces crashes by 12% and reduces peak hour vehicle delays, which are traffic delays during the busiest hour of the day, by 56%. The approximate cost of this alternative is $4,390,000. These costs include construction, right-of-way, engineering and design, and construction inspection. The cost is in 2020 dollars, so they could go up with inflation before the project is funded. However, since we're really early in the design process, there are a lot of contingencies that go into that cost, so this could reduce costs when the project is actually constructed. Alternative 2 addresses safety and traffic delays with a roundabout. Right turn lanes would be added on both legs of Potter Road and NC 75. A left turn lane would also be added on eastbound NC 75. This alternative also realigns Old Waxhaw Monroe Road to improve the approach angle and add a southbound left turn lane. The driveway location for the Kangaroo Express would be relocated to increase the distance from the roundabout. For safety, it also allows room for an exclusive left turn lane. Sidewalks and marked crosswalks are also included for pedestrian connectivity and safety. Similar to Alternative 1, concrete islands would be added to control vehicles turning in and out of the driveways close to the roundabout. However, access would remain to all the properties surrounding the intersection. Right-of-way acquisition would be greater than Alternative 1, and these two buildings on the corner, similar to Alternative 1, would also need to be acquired. This alternative potentially reduces crashes by 40% and reduces peak hour vehicle delays by 80%. The approximate cost of this alternative is $8,740,000. So if you want to come back to review this information later, you can click on these circles as shown here for additional information. There's also a survey at the bottom of the website where you're eligible to provide feedback until April 2nd. The next step for the critical intersection analysis is to evaluate the feedback received from the public involvement and then select a preferred alternative for each intersection. The design concepts will then be finalized and presented to their corresponding municipal boards, so for this circumstance, Mineral Springs, for approval. Finally, a study workbook and action plan will be completed for all of the intersections. With the information provided in the workbook, the town and the county can consider potential funding sources and apply for funding. I will now pass it back to Jenny to conduct the Q&A portion of this meeting.
Thank you, Allison. Again, I'll just remind everyone that you can please submit any questions that you have in the Q&A box. I see we've had a couple come in. You can also search online for the Union County Critical Intersection Program, and you'll find a link to the project website that Allison was going through. And you can also review the information on the other 4 intersections. So we encourage you to go online and review that, and then complete your survey response and tell us which alternative you would prefer by April 2nd. And you can also submit additional comments and questions at the bottom of the online survey. So if you think of a question after the meeting tonight, please feel free to go back and submit it through the website. And I also have Bjorn's contact information listed on this side, so feel free to reach out to him if you have any questions about this specific intersection or the program in general. And one other thing that we have as part of the webinar, we just have a quick poll that I'm going to launch. So if you'd like to provide your feedback during this webinar, you can just click on which alternative you prefer, and I'll just leave that open for the remainder of the Q&A session. So if you want to place your preference during the meeting, please feel free to do that as well. And with that, I think we do have one question in the Q&A box, Bjorn. It was a question about how the needs were determined or identified for the critical intersection program.
Sure, thank you. And that's a good question. As a part of the initial study we did back in 2019 that identified these locations, we went out to the public and asked for locations that they want evaluated, but we also asked for their most important variables that they wanted considered for selecting intersections. Was it on pedestrian safety? Was it on vehicular crashes? Was it on economic activity, which is really truck traffic? Was it on overall congestion? And the answer was that people wanted safety emphasized first, and then vehicular congestion second, and multimodal was lower than that. So we emphasized safety, whether it was the crash rate, the number of crashes, and the number of serious or fatal crashes at a specific location over a 5-year period. And those different ways of looking at safety were about 50% of the total score. And then below that was congestion, and below that was truck traffic. So safety was the most important variable.
And maybe kind of along those lines, Bjorn, do you want to say a little bit about, other intersections throughout the county that haven't been included in this program yet?
Sure. There were plenty of submittals for intersections on, say, US 74 or Monroe Road or Providence Road, and they were not included in the list because they were already funded for either improvements through a NCDOT project to upgrade intersections, like say what's happened on Independence Boulevard near Indian Trail and Stallings, or are going to be part of a widening project for the overall corridor, like Providence Road through Weddington and Waxhaw. Even though these projects are relatively small compared to a widening, they still take several years to implement. And we did not want to spend limited money on intersection projects that would likely get torn up in just a handful of years. So we didn't include intersections on those locations.
And while we're waiting for a couple other questions to come in, I don't know if you might want to speak a little bit to what happens once one of these intersections gets funded. If you could talk through kind of the process that would occur to get the project to construction.
Sure. I'll be glad to talk a little bit about life cycle of a project. So as Bjorn noted, it takes several years to get a project through planning and design and actually get it into construction, where you begin to see that project actually coming to life on the ground. These projects have, with accident rates and things like that we analyze, they can qualify for a number of different funding sources depending on the type of problem that we're trying to solve, whether that's a crash problem, a sight distance problem, or some other sort of problem. Generally, once a project becomes funded, it can take, some projects sit for many years competing for funding unsuccessfully, while others are able to get funded more quickly. And that happens for a variety of different reasons. But generally, we will get that project, once it's funded, we'll get it into our workflow through our, with small projects like this, a lot of those are through our Division 10 Design Construct unit. They generally have a 12 to 18 month backlog of projects that they're working on. So it takes anywhere from a year to a year and a half to get it into their workflow. Generally, they can design a project within a year and have it ready to go to right-of-way acquisition, depending on the number of parcels that are involved and the difficulty in acquiring those. That can take anywhere from generally 8 to 9 months up to as much as 24 months. Utilities will then need to be moved, and then finally the project will be ready for construction. And construction for small intersection projects like this, that can take anywhere from a few months to maybe a year or more. And that's why it seems like that these projects take a considerable amount of time to actually implement and get them on the ground. But when you look at the life cycle of a project from a practical standpoint and all the different steps and the things that have to occur, you can see why it takes sometimes 3 to 4 years to get a project to construction, and then another 6 months to a year, or maybe even some cases even more than a year, to get those projects built on the ground and open to traffic.
Thank you. Maybe kind of as a follow-up to that, we did have a question come in. Bjorn, I'm not sure if this would be one for you, but just clarifying that, are these changes going to happen for certain, and we're just asking people to pick between one alternative or the other, or is it certain that there's going to be improvements at this intersection?
Well, the design to be selected, the responsibility lies with the town of Mineral Springs and with Union County, but it's going to involve a significant amount of feedback from the public and from the NCDOT in terms of the usefulness of the design, the feasibility of the design, and what the wisdom of the public is, both to give us information that we may not be aware of, or also just what their level of support is for the different designs. In a situation like this, we have two very different designs to address the issue. One has a lower impact, it has a lower cost, and it has lower benefits. The other one is more expensive, has more benefits, and it's really a question of what kind of appetite the community has for the impacts that this will have, both in terms of cost and disruption of the community. So that's why we're going out to the public for the feedback. It's for awareness, for information we need to think about that we just may not have been aware of, and to find out what the support is, because we have the mayor of Mineral Springs on the meeting as well, and he and your board, your council, are going to be asked in probably 6 weeks to make a decision which one they support, or potentially neither of them. And that's going to be useful as we move forward to try and get funding. What are we actually trying to implement? So that's how this all comes together.
Thank you. And then we have another question about whether our design concepts considered the future town center zone that has not yet been developed. And I don't know if that's for the town, or Travis may have some more information on that one as well.
Yeah, this is Travis Pressler, NCDOT. I'm not aware of the town center zone, so I'm going to leave that to the town to answer.
So Vicki or Mayor Becker, do you have any updates on the future town center zone?
I was waiting for Vicki, because I know she's been very busy on planning for some of the downtown redevelopment, including that potential town center zoning behind the town hall. So I'll first turn this over to Vicki and see if she has any input into that, and we can come back to me if need be. Vicki?
Well, I can't seem to unmute myself. Jenny, can you tell me the question again, or rephrase it for me?
Yes, they were just asking if our design concepts had considered the future town center zone that hasn't been developed yet downtown.
Well, I know as we were going through the process the last several months, I've always asked about sidewalks being put in there, because our vision was to have a walkable downtown. Now, I don't think Highway 75 is actually going to be where our walkable downtown, so to speak, is. So, but with the sidewalks in both plans, I think that, yes, we have thought of those things. Rick, do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, I would also say, I'm just trying to figure what the question was asking. Would either of these designs possibly, would they be sufficient if the future town center zone is actually developed? And I think, and Vicki, you've worked on this, and Bjorn, you've worked on it. I think the fact that we know traffic is going to increase at the intersection anyway, and if we do get more commercial development, there'll be more traffic. So I think what it's maybe telling us is that if we don't do something in the next 3 or 4 years, and we do try to develop the future town center, it might be a problem if we don't do something. So I think it does maybe lend itself a little bit to the immediacy, because I think development pressure is going to be there to at least get some additional business development. What we've got open now has suddenly taken off. We're getting a lot of interest in business in Mineral Springs, and so hopefully either of these designs does at least increase the capacity of the intersection, increase the ability to turn, get in and out of places, which is getting more difficult now. If that helps, Vicki, if you had any more insight into how that might fit into any future zones or plans.
Well, I think what we still have as unanswered is the property with the dilapidated buildings and how someone is going to get into that project. That is still kind of unanswered for us. And hopefully that will get resolved as we go through. Travis, is he down there?
I'm here. Yes, I'm here.
There you go. I know you know what property I'm talking about and the ins and outs of being able to get in and out of there so that we can have that future development of that property.
Yes, I've had a few questions over the course of time about that particular property, and yeah, it's sometimes hard to answer questions when you're being asked in generalities, but you know that particular property is on the corner, right? It's behind that. It's behind actually the building that it's really on the corner. So you're really close to the intersection, and typically what we try to do is protect the functional area of any intersection. And you know, so we take into consideration things like what type of development is it going to be, what type of traffic is it going to generate, where is it located, what types of access are available to it, and what are the volumes of the streets they're trying to connect to. So these are all things that we take into consideration when we issue access permits, which is what this would require when it is redeveloped at some point in the future. So those are, I don't know that I can really answer fully with specificity at this point because I don't have a site plan in front of me. I don't have half of that information in front of me to answer that, but access can be provided. It's not always what folks would want or expect, but again, because we're trying to protect the functioning of this high volume intersection, just like we would any other high volume intersection. So we just have to, you know, get these plans in, look at them, and make the best decisions we can at that time based on the information that we have. So I don't know if I answered that question, but I have had some inquiries about this parcel, and I'm sure I'll get many in the future, and I'm happy to speak to folks about it.
Travis, would you say that for that property, just would a roundabout work better for that, or turning lanes?
I would say for that property, a roundabout would probably work better. And I think that for access purposes, I think a roundabout almost always works better because you don't have the, you know, when you start talking about really close to the intersection, you don't have the ability to install turn lanes, which are oftentimes critically needed on high volume roadways to get in and out of development. But what the roundabout affords you is the ability to use it as access in multiple directions. You use it almost as a replacement for a turn lane. So you can, you know, if you need to get to a certain spot, you can just whip around the roundabout and come back and make a right in. So I would say for this and almost any other access solution, the roundabout definitely has some benefit for sure.
Thank you.
All right. And that I think you've started to touch on one of the other questions that we've gotten, Travis, just some concern that neither one of these options is really going to benefit the town, and that neither option is going to allow for growth of Mineral Springs. I don't know if Mayor Becker has anything to say to that in terms of, how these options may help the town grow.
As I said before, I think what will prevent growth is a congested intersection where even now, during peak periods, you may sit through 2, 3, 4 changes of the light, especially if you're traveling north or south on Potter Road. You may sit through multiple changes of the light to make a turn, especially a left turn. So the intersection right now is not delivering a high level of service. And I would say that without making these changes, or some changes like this, it would actually hamper growth. I would differ with the questioner. I think that either of these changes would improve traffic through Mineral Springs, and as Travis suggested, would actually enhance access into the businesses that are near the intersection. So I can't imagine what more, because if you look at these projects, and for people who've been in Mineral Springs for a long time, and I have, both of them are very large, and they're a little bit sometimes overwhelming to some people. A very important business would probably have to be moved, and just a lot more asphalt one way or the other. And so these are big projects, and I can't imagine how there could be a bigger project but there's even room for it to produce more growth in Mineral Springs. I think these are about as big as we could get. And I can't imagine what else somebody would want to promote even greater growth.
And then sort of another question related to that was, how is the town addressing abandoned properties in the area?
Is that a Vicky one or a Rick one?
Oh, that's
for grabs.
That's definitely you, Mayor.
Then I will talk about abandoned properties. What has been beneficial to us in the past, I'd say 18 months, has been a pretty robust interest in Mineral Springs on the part of underutilized properties, vacant rental properties that are now almost fully rented. This is a question, I think, of private sector development, which is always the best way to develop things. And as Vicky and Travis pointed out, we've even had rather significant interest in purchasers of the most dilapidated corner, which is the northeast corner. And the concerns about possible access with the intersection the way it is now, I think, have hampered some of those purchase and redevelopment thoughts. I know there was a very serious buyer, and I know Vicky has addressed our town council about this with some disappointment that with the current state of the intersection, that access would be really very, very limited to that parcel, and therefore that sale has not taken place. But I think the town has really done a lot to try to address these things, and what we're trying to do is be proactive in terms of attracting businesses. And the businesses that have opened in the past 18 months have all been very successful. You need to have a business that fits the community and that's going to be patronized by the community and that may have a symbiotic relationship with other businesses in the community. And what we have right now, I think, hit all of those points, and that's why they're successful. So, I mean, there's been talk that we should be involved in condemning and tearing down private buildings, and that's just something that we found as a governing body, we can't undertake the expense and the legal ramifications of doing that. And the private sector has done very well with making use of underutilized properties, and I think that either of these intersection improvements may facilitate more of that happening. So that's really where I think we should be heading. And I'm getting off the topic of these intersections because it's really a whole separate issue of whether the town is going to be seizing private property. And the town council has not really had the appetite to do that. But they do want to put regulations in place and have a zoning administrator like Ms. Brooks, who are very, very dedicated to working with the business community to make our businesses successful in Mineral Springs.
And then the next comment that came in is asking why would we want to promote growth? You know, they like the small town the way it is, and I imagine that's something that you deal with, you know, in your community with those, you know, who want growth and balancing that with keeping the small town feel. So I don't know if you have any response to that, Mayor Becker.
I can certainly address that too, and I think anybody who's known me for the past 25 years knows that I'm almost legendary and notorious for being, I'm accused of being anti-growth. We've been extremely careful in Mineral Springs not to grow the way some of the towns around us have grown. And I think our residential zoning, and Vicky should be talking about this because she does such a fantastic job at that, has been keeping the town small, keeping the character rural, but we do have a main strip through downtown, and we do have businesses, buildings that are there already. And the buildings, in some cases, were either empty, or in some cases, the ones that are being discussed on the corner are in bad condition. So it's not that we want growth. We don't want Walmart to come to Mineral Springs. We don't want Target to come to Mineral Springs. That I don't think anybody on the town council would be asking for that. I think that we've been very consistent, but I know that when we've done resident surveys, a majority of residents say they'd like to see our business district be a little more able to serve the needs of the residents. Not that we want a lot of stores or a lot of commercial enterprises, but that there needs to be something just where you can go and you can have a burger, and we have a grill you can do that at now. You can have a pizza. We have a great specialty bakery and bistro. So these are things people have wanted, and they're going to them. So I don't think that no growth or no change is the answer, but I am certainly an advocate of very, very, very small growth. And we're already finding that growth around us. And I think this is the last thing I'll say on this topic. A lot of the congestion at this intersection has something to do with Mineral Springs. We have growth south of us, east of us, west of us, and north of us. And the people are traveling on Potter Road and Highway 75 to get to those places. And we're in the middle. And so we're kind of a victim of other people's growth. And as the town where this intersection exists, it's going to get more and more congested, and will eventually reach levels of service of F at all times of the day. And that'll be, I think, bad for the town and bad for the county.
Thank you, Mayor. And that looks like we've gotten through all of the questions that have come through the Q&A box at the bottom. And I will say we checked the online poll this morning, and it looks like about 47 people have responded through the online survey, and it's pretty evenly split, with about 25 people preferring the turn lane improvements and 20 people preferring the roundabout, and a couple that liked neither or both. So just wanted to give a quick update on kind of how the online survey is going, and looks like based on our polling results, we have a couple of people that prefer the turn lane improvements and one that would prefer neither so far on the poll in this meeting. And with no more questions coming in, I don't know if Bjorn or Stuart or Travis have anything else that you'd like to add or be sure that we point out about this intersection.
Yeah, I'd like to add something. I just want to make sure everyone who's on the attendee list, make sure to share these links with your friends and neighbors. I personally went along the NC 200 corridor for our intersection at 200 and Plyler Mill, where we have about this many responses, but we want more to the survey. And I took the flyers for these community meetings and gave them to each of the businesses, the gas stations and whatnot along that corridor. And I would ask that perhaps the town do that as well. Take the flyers that we mailed out to the adjacent property owners and distribute them to the local businesses, and ask people to fill this out now through the end of next week, because we want as much awareness and as much feedback as possible to inform the town council and the county commission when they make a decision. And again, their decision could be the roundabout, it could be the turn lanes, or it could be neither. And that will be pretty much the course for quite a while until we choose to revisit the issue if the answer is neither of these. But the county has a congestion issue, has a safety issue. On a per mile basis, we're one of the worst in the state, and we're really doing our best with limited funds to improve key locations, both from a safety and a congestion perspective. And these involve a lot of partnerships. The town is in no position to build this type of project. The county's in no position to build this type of project. The DOT has the capability, but sometimes lacks the money. So it's a partnership to put all that together, but we really don't want to build something that the public is dead set against. So it's a balancing act, and we're faced with hard decisions, but getting as much community feedback is always a goal.
Great. Thank you, Bjorn. And I don't know if Vicki or Mayor Becker, do you have any final comments you'd like to make?
Vicki, do you want me to say a couple more things? And yeah, I'll re-echo what Bjorn said. Please spread the word to take the poll. And I'm not trying to take sides here. There's nothing wrong with saying neither. If you as a citizen really feel that neither of these alternatives would in your opinion be beneficial, that's a valid response. And both, if you think, hey, either one is good. I mean, you don't have to necessarily pick one or the other. And I will say what Bjorn said, and we don't know whether there'll be enough funding for this. A lot of these grants require substantial local matches, and the town of Mineral Springs may not have enough money even for a local match. There could be delays just based on strictly on financial reasons. So there's a lot up in the air right now, and we're really early in this planning stage, and this is really when it's most important to get as much public input as we can. And I think, Bjorn, there's also a comment section in the poll, right? So people can write free form and explain what they think, why they think that a choice that they've made is better, or what maybe they have as a suggestion. And I think that would be very valuable, particularly to the task force with Bjorn and Vicki and Allison, who are working on the project as it evolves. And I think getting that kind of the essay question, so to speak, might really help a lot. And that's what we're doing these meetings for. So thank you.
We did get a question from Megan Wallace.
Yes, I just saw that come in. I was going to see, Allison, if you want to scroll back up on the design, a question about where does this leave the barber shop?
Yes, and we're talking about this property here on the corner. One challenge that we have with this property is the limited parking. And so, and I'll let Stuart or Travis add to this, but when it comes to right-of-way acquisition, sometimes it's more than just how are we impacting the building, but if the parking is being taken to where there isn't anywhere to park, that's also going to not allow the business to continue. So that is why on both of these alternatives, as you can see, the impacts are a little bit more severe shown here in the roundabout alternative. But even with the turn lane additions, that little bit of widening and adding those sidewalks, we're going to remove the parking from the barber shop. So I don't know, Stuart or Travis, if you guys want to add anything to how that acquisition process would work for a business.
This is Travis Pressler. I just for clarity's sake, we believe, Allison, this is kind of a question, but we believe the impact to that property are the same for both alternatives. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. Even though what you see on the picture is that the roundabout covers up part or more of the building, the real impact to that building, that property, and that business is the same for both alternatives. I don't know if that was the person's question or not, but just wanted clarity to clarify that.
And we also had a follow-up question if that issue could be resolved if we had a less intrusive turn lane project.
So I think for this one, it is so narrow here and we're pretty constrained. This is probably the toughest leg of the intersection because you've got the railroad right here. we've got the barber shop on the corner, but then we've also got the parking lot over here for the strip mall. So it's definitely challenging on where to widen, and really any widening at all, unfortunately, is going to go into that on-street parking that they've got here along the barber shop, and incorporating those parking impacts. Now, there's always a chance, again, this is early in the design, that there's maybe something to look into, to where maybe we could minimize the impacts or save some parking. But just from looking at it at an overall viewpoint at this level of design, it is looking like it is most likely going to be an impact for the building.
I think also with that question of the less intrusive turn lane project, I think it was maybe having fewer turn lane improvements, like simplifying the design of it, which, you know, when we evaluated the traffic conditions and the existing road layout, I think you were running into just not enough benefits with those limited turn lanes. You still had choke points on, you know, if you did them only on 75, well, you still had Potter Road backing up. If you did it on Potter Road, then 75 was still backing up. And it was really a matter of delivering something that would still be useful the day after it opened. And that's really the pickle we find here. It's a very constrained intersection. The minute you move a foot off of the right of way, you're hitting just about every kind of conflict you could think of, whether it's a business, a utility, pipes underground, storm drainage. It's very complicated, and pretty much anything that gets done here is going to be impactful at the adjacent properties.
And Bjorn, that's a great point. And it's the same also for the roundabout. We ran into the exact same complication that you were speaking of with the turn lanes on the signalized intersection, was that at the roundabout, we did try to see, was there any lanes we could take away to be less impactful? And exactly as you said, it just didn't provide the traffic benefit without having all of the lanes in there to flow the traffic.
And also just wanted to point out, Allison, like you said in your presentation, I mean, that this isn't something that's going into right-of-way acquisition immediately. So it's not an impact that's going to happen right now, because, you know, we're just evaluating the design concepts at this point. There's no funding at this point for right-of-way acquisition. So just, I don't know if you had anything to add there, but just wanted to reiterate that it's not happening right now.
Right, Jenny, that's very true. And really what we're trying to do is show what the most realistic options that we can at this level of design that we have.
But, you know, I just pulled up the county parcel map. Megan is owner of, at least part owner of the business there at that corner property. So this is very personal for her. And one thing that we're definitely aware of is when you set a design for a project and then you have this lag until it actually moves in, property owners are left in this limbo where you just don't want to invest in your property or maintain it, because what's the point? It's just going to get torn down and it'll go away. And so we're very serious with moving forward with these projects as soon as they are as soon as they're designed. We've been successful in getting 2 of these already funded in the first year that the program existed. So we're really trying to move forward with a very feasible list of intersections that have a lot of local support, so that we can minimize those types of uncertainties, these dark clouds that hang over the property owners. And Jenny, we received another question.
Yes. And I believe, Allison, it's on the turn lane alternative. It's asking that if we take some of the parking lot on the south or the west side and then have less turn lanes coming on Potter's Road from the north, then traveling through the intersection, could we accomplish the same thing with only one left turn and then combining the straight through movement, the straight through and right?
Okay, I'm going to read through that, Jenny, with this on the screen and make sure I'm following that correctly. So I know it's a little hard typing it into the Q&A box. You can accomplish the same with only one left turn lane and combining the straight through and right. It looks like here on the going north
I think it's coming from the north.
From Potter's,
Coming from Potter's North.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, and again, this speaks to kind of what Bjorn was saying earlier about the traffic. Actually, to be honest, it was challenging to even fit any turn lanes in here. You know, just standing out here observing this intersection, we've already got vehicles backing up over the tracks, and so we were very constrained already with what we could provide because of the railroad tracks. And so the traffic analysis really did show a need for both that left turn lane and the right turn lane. We did look extensively to see if there was any lanes that we could remove and meet an acceptable, what we call level of service for traffic, which is just an indication of how the traffic is flowing in the intersection. And both of those were needed. And I know this particular leg, Potter Road backs up pretty bad, I think, in this intersection. And so it can be challenging already with the traffic there.
That's a very active rail line, as the people live in that area know. And I pray this never happens, but you hear about it elsewhere. You know, cars are backed up, someone gets stuck waiting, and there's a crash. I mean, this is a real world consideration that, you know, drove some of these design decisions.
Yeah, and I'll add to that too. As Allison mentioned, the backups to the rail line are frequent, and I recall specifically the day that we visited this site in the field. We stood in the parking lot of the strip mall and observed 5 consecutive signal cycles, and in 4 of those signal cycles, traffic backed across the tracks and further back on the other side of the track. The 5th cycle, it backed all the way up almost to the track, but not across it. So I think there was only enough room to get maybe 1 vehicle in line without having them straddle the track. So generally with projects of this nature, we'll design them for a 20-year life cycle. So when you take today's traffic and you grow it out to what it would be in 20 years, that's where you see the need for these types of changes. And that's why you're seeing the number of turn lanes that you're seeing in these design concepts.
All right, and I think that has taken care of any questions that were coming through the Q&A. I'll give it just another minute to make sure nothing else comes in, but again, like everyone said, just encouraging you to go to the website and share the links with your friends and neighbors and have them go on and share their feedback. And we will be recording, or we are recording this presentation, and we'll be posting it on the project website within the next few days. So anyone that wasn't able to attend, if you want to tell them to go to the website, they can view this presentation there as well. Looks like one more comment just came in. A straight through and a right turn will accomplish the same thing. The issue comes from the cars wanting to turn left toward Monroe and having traffic come through from Potter's Road south, and it doesn't allow those cars to turn towards Monroe.
So I'll flip back to the story map here. And you're right, there is the congestion of those left turn lanes, but what this does allow, and speaks kind of to what Stuart was saying, is that if you get a right turn lane in here, you're going to get more vehicles getting out of here, a chance to turn right to where they're not waiting on the through traffic there. Because there is still a decent amount of cars that are making that right turn movement.
But one left, I mean, it's absolutely true. Left-hand turn lane, you know, one person waiting to turn can clog the whole thing up because of all the, you know, opposite traffic. But, you know, they're all needed, I think, was the conclusion from the traffic grown out to some horizon year.
Right, and to add to that too, really the left turn lane is one of the more challenging things here, because you would have to keep this through lane lined up. So eliminating the right turn lane does have a little bit less impact on the strip mall. But in order to shift off the barbershop, you have to shift down on this leg too, in order to keep the alignment of the road, if that makes sense, for the through vehicles traveling through Potter. So really, you know, that left turn lane is needed and is causing some of that impact.
But for those of you who are on, we'll be sure, at least from a county perspective, we're pretty good about providing updates on social media. So if you don't follow Union County, please like us, and you'll get updates on things like this that will give you the opportunity to attend or at least follow along on YouTube to see what the meeting is.
And
Bill, I might add that we have links to all of this on our website, and it was on our Facebook page the other day. So you can get to the county and to all of this via our website and Facebook page.
I know Allison kind of talked through the process, but as we wrap up the public involvement and then move into, writing the report and going to the town boards with the recommendations, that final report will be posted on the website as well. I think around the June timeframe. Is that right, Allison?
Yes, that's correct. And if you want to look at the one from the previous study that Bjorn spoke to at the very beginning of the presentation, that one is already available online. And so there will be a similar report, but of course it'll be for these 5 intersections.
Okay, well, I think that brings us to the end of our virtual public meeting, and we certainly appreciate everyone that took the time to call in and join us and provide your questions. And we look forward to getting additional feedback from the website. And, please feel free, as the mayor said, to, write in additional comments in the box, or, reach out to Bjorn or anyone at the town of Mineral Springs as well. So Bjorn, I don't know if you have any final closing words, but I think we're good.
If you really enjoyed this one, there will be a second one, or at least on a different location, 601 and Brief in Fairview tomorrow night, and Thursday night at Bonds Grove Church in Waxhaw Marvin, just a few miles northwest of you, to learn more about other locations. And we did get a couple more of these. Will Mineral Springs have an open forum meeting to openly discuss this issue? Mineral Springs, I'm assuming that you have a public comment period at the beginning of every board meeting.
Yes, we do.
As does the county commission. And see the email address for any information that comes in about this for Megan. And certainly, once a decision's made on the design, we can certainly push that information out.
Sounds good. Well, thank you, everyone, and have a good evening.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you very much. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.